Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show where I talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and/or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Manifest. A lot of interesting things went down in this episode. Obviously, you have been trying to walk away from this whole situation, which Michaela's like, you can't walk away from this calling. Because Ben's trying to rationalize it by being like, how do we know that this is all good? I mean, look what happened with Jared. Jared's job is on the line. Like, this is all kind of like, it's not all good. But it's also stemming from the fact is his life is already complicated. He already missed time with his wife and his daughter, and he doesn't want to miss any more time because he feels like the more he goes down this route, the more he's jeopardizing everything because everything's already changed and he doesn't want it to change. Because all of them thought when they came back, obviously they were picking up right where they left off, but that is not the case for everyone. Things have changed, and so he doesn't want things to change anymore that they have. So literally the entire episode, he's flipping coins with Cal and being like, "Hey, let's change things a little bit. Let's go down a different route. Let's leave it up. Let's leave it up to like, hey, like no one controlling our destiny. Like let's flip a coin." And he's hearing his voice, which sounds like himself saying, it's all connected, which kind of goes back to I hadn't heard it in a while because I thought like maybe it was only in the first episode, but it's like, no, it's still there. I guess it goes back to the whole situation of if you're going to hear something, you might as well hear it in your own voice. That, like I said, it depends on what this whole thing is about, where their mind sent to the future, hence they know why everything is what it is, knowing what they know, or is there more to it? Is it like, or like I said, or well, what I was trying to say is like maybe it's just easier to hear things in your own voice, like maybe like from some psychological angle, like that's why whatever it is, it's manifesting as their own voice. Could be either or, I don't know. So what's interesting is that even with all this, Ben doing this and doing that, Cal kind of gets this pull and ends up going through tunnels and stuff like that and leads them to Thomas. He even knows Thomas's name, but Ben's like, oh, have you been hearing voices? It's like, no. Cal just kind of feels this pull, like something's kind of pulling him along. So it's something that Ben talks about later on, and that's kind of what I thought too. Like, Cal is connected to all of this. He's kind of at the very center of all of this. Like later on, it kind of gets described as like a spider web. They're all caught in it, but I'd say Cal is at the center of it because whatever it was that made them the way they are is on a whole different level for Cal than it is anyone else because it doesn't manifest in him needing a voice. Like he just knows things because we saw it at the end where it's like there's a bright light and he's looking at it while everyone else is unconscious. I guess it's at that point where everyone had what is the equivalent of like a stroke because they all died but came back. So it seems like he woke up and he got like whatever it was that made them the way they are. It might have like downloaded itself into Cal's brain potentially, like it exists in him. He's like its vessel. So whereas, which is kind of what I was thinking so before, but then I was like, oh, maybe that's not the case, but it seems like it is that case. So maybe what they're getting is actually stemming from Cal. Cal has like the centerfold of everything, and then there's all these different connections like stemming from Cal that are hitting all the other people. Because the grand scheme of things, it's like, how is this all connected like the way it is? It makes you wonder because it does seem like there is no fate or destiny in the situation. It seems like everything is laid out in this spider web, and it doesn't just stop with them. It branches out so much further with the connective lives of everything and everyone else, you know? So because Bethany gets arrested, but her wife takes over the plan and helps out with Thomas. And in the long run, that actually works out better because as we can see, Bethany was already being kept an eye on by Vance. So if she had taken Thomas where she wanted to go, like they would have eventually tracked her. But like, since it's her wife doing it, it's a place that's not necessarily, they wouldn't know it's connected to Bethany, but even if they did, they wouldn't be able to, bring any connection to her wife in that regard. So it's kind of interesting how that all kind of works out in the end. I guess it's very fitting on some level when you think about the fact is that Thomas gave Cal a chessboard and stuff like that. So no matter how much Ben wanted to get away from this situation, he has no choice but to work with it now because now Cal's involved and he knows Cal's at the centerfold of this, that there is something different about him. So there is no walking away. Things are different now. So there's that side of things. Then there's the whole Michaela situation, which is kind of interesting because I like what they did with this episode. They balance it between like present day with everything going on from the flight, as well as in the past, kind of leading up till now with each of like characters handling the situation. Like we see it with Grace and Olive, to Ben and Michaela's mom and dad, to Jarrett and Lourdes, in a sense of like, well, with Grace, her trying to handle everything. Like 6 months after the disappearance of the flight, she realizes how much she's kind of falling apart because like Olive is trying to take care of her. Olive literally cuts herself trying to make her mom a sandwich, and there's no bread, the cheese wasn't good, or there's no more meat. So it's like, I just made you canned soup or whatever, just because like, I hope this is okay, you gotta eat. And that kind of made her look in the mirror, go to a support group where she met Danny. And things were a little rough with Olive, but, you know, because even Olive's like, oh, I know that's your boyfriend. But the way Danny kind of reached out to her, he was there when she needed him to be. And so for him, it isn't, and even for Danny, it's not just about quitting Grace. It's like, okay, I can move past you. I can find some way to survive losing you, but not Olive. Because it turns out that's how they actually met, because they met through a support group of people who lost their significant others. Like he lost his Nina, but he doesn't think he can lose Olive. So that's what that whole situation stems about, because it's like, for Olive, it's like Danny's just as much her dad as Ben is. Like, he might not be her biological dad, but he was there for her in a time when she needed him. So Grace is in a conflicted situation she's in, because even for Danny, he describes it, it's like 10 days, 10 days ago, I was living here. This was practically my family, and now it's just kind of up in the air. So, because the sad thing is, this isn't fair for anyone. It's a situation that's messed up on all fronts, because Danny obviously loves Grace. He loves Olive. But at the same time, it's like, this is Ben's family. Like, for him, no time has passed. For them, so much time has passed. And it's like, Ben probably thought in his head that he'd be okay with whatever she needed to do to survive those 5 years. But now it's kind of like, what she needed to survive isn't going. She thought it was going, but it's not. And I still feel like in some shape or form, things will come back in some shape or form, and that Ben is going to get tangled up in this whole thing. Like, he's going to end up, whatever's happening is going to lead him to Danny. So he's going to have to help Danny in some shape or form. I mean, this is the new reality he kind of has to deal with. It's a complicated situation, you know, and it's kind of sad that, like I said, it's just, you feel bad for Ben, but at the same time, you understand it's like what good this all did for Olive and Grace. It picked them up when they were going through such a tough time. And then on top of all of that, you have, like, you know, everything with Jarrett and Lourdes. It's interesting because Michaela and Ben's mom she was the most okay with them moving on, because it's like, oh, this is what Michaela would want. Their dad had the biggest hesitation because he saw that Jarrett was still in love with Michaela. So it's that complicated situation, because like, if her dad was in Michaela's shoes, he's like, if I came back and your mom was with another man, I'd fight like hell to get her back, because he knows that Michaela, it's like, you're still in love with him, especially when she admitted, like, I was going to say yes, but for her, it's a complicated thing of like, it's the man I love with my best friend. They're married. They're happy. How can I try and tear that apart? But it's like, well, what about your own feelings too? Because you being happy at the end of the day is also important. So, do you destroy the happiness of the two people you care about the most just to make sure you're happy? It's a complicated thing. I wouldn't know how to go about it, because I don't think, like, there's not going to be like a happy ending for everybody in that situation. Because Michaela tried to go to Lourdes about the whole, like, Jarrett thing, and it turns out, oh, he didn't tell you. And I'm like, oh, that's going to complicate things. But even later on, she's like, why didn't you tell me? The fact of the matter is, you've never kept secrets from me, but now that you did, now it's something about Michaela, you did. So is there anything more to this? He's like, no, it's just simply because things have been tough for her since she's coming off the flight, coming back home. So it's like, hey, I'm just trying to make things easier for her. I don't want to complicate things for her. But it's like, no, those feelings are there. They still have not gone away for you either. And it's hard, especially, I mean, because Jarrett doesn't know that she was going to say yes. Lourdes doesn't know that either, because Lourdes was giving Michaela the chance, but at the same time, it's just that thing of like, no, you're happy. I have no right to take away your happiness, because she knows if she did, like, because she's, I think, legitimately afraid, because as we can tell, Michaela, Lourdes, and Evie were best friends even when they were younger. And so she doesn't want to lose one of her best friends, nor does she want to lose the man she loves. So it's that complicated situation, you know? So I'm curious to see what she does in the end, because she tried to talk to Jarrett about it later on. But I was curious because the moment he just simply got the 10-day pay cut, I was like, oh, like he won't get paid. I was like, okay, so maybe Michaela came forward. But then I was like, wouldn't he still suffer some ramifications for giving like a false report or something like that? But it's like, nope. It turns out Vance is there, which I guess maybe that's all the connectivity behind this. Like maybe if Michaela had come, I don't know, maybe in the long run, you know, we don't know how far this is going to reach. Like maybe Jared being in a situation, the compromising position that he's in with the whole Vance situation might end up being helpful in the end. I mean, granted, he doesn't tell anything to Michaela. He didn't say anything before because he wasn't joining up with Vance. But now I feel like you should probably be like, okay, so this NSA agent's super like wants to know everything about you. So like, you got to let me know what's up. I think eventually Michaela is going to bring him into the fold. I mean, to be fair, it hasn't happened yet. We're like letting someone outside of this 828 flight know about what's going on. Like that hasn't happened yet. It's kind of a well-kept secret amongst them. So I'm curious to see in the long run what this all means. Because what about the whole Bethany situation, especially because Vance is going to be holding her and charging her with this and that. So I'm curious to see if someone's going to be able to get her out of this. You know, it's interesting because there was like a slight note I didn't catch. Apparently they mentioned someone in particular on the flight. They're like, oh, renowned so-and-so, Fiona somebody. So I was like, wait, what? That's kind of interesting. Just a little small detail. So it's like, okay, so that must be coming up maybe in the next episode or something fairly soon. Just because it's like there was apparently someone pretty big on the flight. So I'm curious to see what that person's story ends up coming about, because obviously slowly but surely we are connecting dots with everyone on the flight. They have some stories that are kind of unraveling. So I'm curious to see what ends up happening with the whole Bethany situation and whether or not Michaela will ultimately tell Jared everything, especially considering like, oh, like I said, she was about to talk to him about her feelings and everything. So we'll see in the long run what ends up happening there. And obviously, the biggest mystery going forward is what Cal's whole situation is, what the family dynamic is going to be like going forward. Because obviously, a lot of that Danny stuff is still happening behind Ben's back to a certain degree. So obviously, like, you know, it's something that Grace and Olive can't deny anymore. So, because even Danny said that like Olive felt guilty that the person she called was Danny, because that's the thing, everything she said that day, like, oh, Danny already knows I'm a screw up and stuff like that. Now it kind of, in retrospect, now it's kind of like, no, she was making excuses because she didn't want to tell Ben, like, no, the truth of the matter is the reason why I called Danny, because Danny was kind of the, you know, it's not just because, I think maybe there's some truth to it, maybe, but more so it is because he's kind of been her dad, so it's kind of like a reflex because she's not used to having her dad back to be there for her. So it's just, like I said, it's just a complicated situation, and I'm curious to see how that all handles going forward, especially because of the whole Cal situation. There's also a side of you that's kind of like, you notice, and it's kind of, well, I'm not going to because it's such a nitpicky thing in the sense of like, you kind of feel bad because it's like, oh yeah, like the person she was the most devastated about was Cal. I was like, yeah, Ben, but we already know, she already made it clear from the beginning, like how, like, she had negative feelings towards Ben because they were already in a complicated situation, which even like Ben's mom had caught on to that. She's like, oh, you guys are having little marital issues. She's like, I can tell. So it's that thing of like, she already talked about the fact is that she kind of blamed Ben a little bit herself because it's like, you're the one that decided to take Cal with you. So she kind of like, any time I would have had with him, it's gone now because you did what you did. But at the same time, it's like, if Cal wasn't on that flight, he wouldn't be where he is right now because it brought him back in a point in time where he can be, his condition can be, there's more option. There's another better option for his condition, you know? So I'm also curious about the whole Sanvi situation too, because they got Bethany, but Sanvi was obviously there at the same time. I mean, to be fair, that's where she works. So that's her way out of that situation. But you know, Vance is not giving up because he's so invested in his situation. He's like, this is a state, like, I guess it stems from the fact of the matter is they don't know. So I guess that's what it comes down to, because it's not like they've done anything criminal, whether this is like, because it's almost like they're being treated like, oh, you did something bad. It's like, oh, what this could do for the country and stuff, like it could be dangerous for the country, like these people being gone for so long. Like obviously he doesn't think there's some like mysticism or some like, greater thing happening here. He thinks like, no, whatever. The thing is, he doesn't understand, and he's not going to stop until he understands. Hence why he's pushing with the whole Jared and giving him information on Michaela thing. So, and even that in itself, we'll see where that goes, because obviously Jared feels he has the feelings for Michaela, and then you can even know Lourdes is feeling it too. And now it's like, what happens with their situation? Because it's actually kind of messed up that basically the day Michaela returned is the 3-year anniversary of Jared and Lourdes kissing, which is like, oh, that's super messed up. Just as messed up as that whole Danny situation of like, he was literally living there and he decided to leave, and Grace was just kind of like, yeah, I think it is best that happened. So, complicated situation all around. I'm very interested to see where all of this leads us in the next episode. But really, that's all I want to talk about. So the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.